I used to think noticing details was my thing. Little stuff like when the mail's a day late or the way someone's smile flickers before a lie. But even with that supposed sixth sense, I didn't see Nicole slipping away. Not at first. That morning had been normal. Or what passed for normal lately. We exchanged a few rushed words before work. "Coffee's cold," she said. I nodded, already half out the door. I remember thinking her tone felt flat, like she wasn't really talking to me. Just filling space. Later that evening, after work, I got in the car like I always did. Dropped my bag onto the passenger seat, reached back for a hoodie, and saw it half hidden in the crease of the back seat. A bracelet. Not just any bracelet. Delicate, thin gold chain. Sapphire charm. Definitely not costume jewelry. And engraved on the inside? 2 tiny letters, JM. My heart dropped into my stomach. I stared at it for a long time. I knew what Nicole owned. Hell, I helped her pick out half her jewelry. This wasn't hers. I turned it over in my palm, looking for clues. It smelled faintly of floral perfume, something warm, expensive, not Nicole's usual citrusy stuff. It had a faint warmth to it, like it hadn't been sitting there long. I just sat there, gripping the steering wheel with one hand, the bracelet in the other. My first instinct was denial. Maybe she got it for someone else. Maybe it's a gift for her sister. Maybe, but none of those thoughts lasted more than a second. I hadn't driven anyone else in weeks. We share the car. And Nicole hadn't mentioned anything about picking up a gift for someone. So I brought it inside. I didn't storm in or raise my voice. That wasn't me. Instead, I waited. We were in the kitchen, her pulling off her coat, and I held it out to her. "Hey," I said. "Is this yours?" She barely glanced at it. "What?" "This bracelet. I found it in the back seat." There wasn't even a flicker in her expression. No surprise. No curiosity. Just a raised brow and a laugh, short, practiced. "Oh my God," she said, like I'd accused her of a crime. "Are you spying on me now?" I felt my face flush, but I held my ground. "No, I just—" "Maybe you drove someone and forgot," she said, brushing past me toward the bedroom. "You always forget that kind of thing." She left me standing there, the bracelet still in my hand. No follow-up. "No, let me see that again." "No, whose could it be?" "Just a wall." She went into the bedroom and shut the door like it meant nothing. And maybe to her it didn't. But to me it meant something. That was the moment it started. Up until then I'd been ignoring things. Or maybe trying to convince myself they weren't things at all. Her phone always on silent. That new perfume she suddenly hated, the one I'd given her for our anniversary. Her late nights at work that had become more and more frequent, with less and less detail. I'd explained it all away. We were both stressed. Work was crazy. People change, right? But the bracelet? That was different. That was real. Tangible. Something I could touch, could turn over in my hands. It didn't belong in our life, and Nicole didn't care that I knew it. She shut the door, and I stood in the hallway for what felt like an hour, hearing the faint creak of floorboards, drawers opening, her voice on a call, light, friendly, too quiet to make out words. I didn't ask who she was talking to. I didn't go in. I couldn't. I remember putting the bracelet on the windowsill in the kitchen, like if I left it there long enough it would explain itself. But it never did. That night, lying beside her in bed, I could barely breathe. She was already asleep or pretending to be. I stared at the ceiling, wondering how long I'd been looking in the wrong direction. How long I'd been comforting myself with the illusion that this was just a rough patch. And the worst part? I still wanted to believe her. I tried to talk myself out of it. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe she was right, maybe I had driven someone and I just forgot. Maybe I was paranoid. But if I was paranoid, why did her answer feel so rehearsed? Why did she walk away so fast? Why did she not care whose it was? I didn't sleep much that night. And when I woke up, Nicole was already gone. Her side of the bed cold. No note, no kiss goodbye. Just me. And the bracelet. Still on the windowsill, catching the morning light. That day at work, I kept staring at the initials in my mind. Jam. Who was that? I couldn't stop thinking about it. I checked her social media, her friends list. Nobody obvious. I even checked mine, wondering if there was some mutual connection I'd forgotten. Nothing. But the bracelet had done its job. It cracked something open in me. I'd spent so long defending Nicole in my mind, making excuses for her emotional distance, for the way she'd started flinching when I touched her shoulder, for the locked screen on her phone, for her sudden interest in yoga and solo hikes on weekends. I told myself she just needed space. We all go through phases. But phases don't leave behind someone else's jewelry. And that night when she came home, I watched her more closely. The way she hesitated before unlocking the door. How she looked surprised when she saw me still awake on the couch, like she didn't expect me to be there. Her smile was there, but her eyes weren't. She said, "Long day," and kissed my cheek. I caught the scent again, the same one from the bracelet. It hit me then like cold water. Nicole was not confused. She wasn't emotionally lost. She was hiding something. And I had just stepped into a role I hadn't signed up for, the guy who gets lied to every day and smiles through it. The guy who starts doubting what he knows to be true just to preserve the illusion of love. I didn't confront her again that night. I didn't want another empty deflection or joke at my expense. I just watched, listened, took mental notes of the things that didn't make sense. I started paying attention, really paying attention for the first time in months. And I kept the bracelet. I put it in my nightstand beneath the stack of old receipts and mismatched earbuds where she wouldn't find it. Because if I was right, if something was happening, I needed proof. And if I was wrong, I needed to know that too. But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. I had just witnessed the first crack in the mirror. And no matter how hard Nicole tried to smooth it over, the reflection would never look the same again. It's strange how clearly you start to remember things once doubt takes root in your mind. Like your brain flips through old moments, looking for missed signs, whispering, "See? It was always there, you just didn't want to see it." After that night with the bracelet, I started noticing all of Nicole's little things. The habits that once seemed like quirks, or just the result of long workdays, suddenly stood out like red flags I'd somehow trained myself to ignore. For example, the way she started wiping off her makeup in the car before coming inside. At first, I thought nothing of it. Some women do that, right? End of day fatigue. But then I realized it wasn't just makeup removal, it was strategic. Like she didn't want me to see what she looked like earlier. I'd spot a smear of eyeliner on a napkin stuffed into the side of the door, or faint traces of lipstick on the collar of her jacket that didn't match the shade she left the house with. Then there was the phone. She used to toss it on the counter without a second thought. She even used to ask me to plug it in when it was low. Yeah? It was always face down. Always. Even when it buzzed, even when it lit up and flashed some name I couldn't catch in time. And the notifications changed too. Messages used to pop up in full, texts from her sister, group chats, Instagram replies. Then suddenly they were just labeled message or notification with no preview. A change in settings. A quiet barrier. One I wasn't supposed to notice. She used to hum when she cooked. She used to text me little things during the day, pictures of a weird cloud, a link to a song, a meme she thought I'd like. All of that had faded. Replaced by silence. Polite replies. Delayed responses. And an emotional distance I didn't know how to close. I started listening for her footsteps at night. That's how far it got. I'd lie in bed, pretending to scroll my phone, waiting for the sound of her heels on the front step. I'd glance at the clock, 10:40. 10:58. 11:12, another late meeting. Another client dinner she claimed she couldn't skip. She used to send a selfie when she got dressed up for work events. Now I only saw the aftermath, the faint perfume, the quiet door click, the hangover excuse the next day. Once she said she was going to her sister's place across town. I didn't question it, why would I? But later that evening I realized her phone had connected to the Bluetooth in our car. I opened the app out of boredom. GPS showed her final location pinged from the opposite side of the city, somewhere near the Arts District. Her sister lives in Northdale. This was East Court. It sat in my gut like a brick. That night, she came home later than usual. Her voice was light, cheerful even. I asked her if her sister was okay, just to see. Nicole blinked like she had to remember the script. Oh yeah. She's stressed with the wedding stuff, you know. Her sister isn't getting married. That was last year. But I didn't say anything. That became the rhythm of my life. Quietly collecting discrepancies. Watching her drift further away while I pretended not to notice. Not because I was weak, but because I was afraid of what would happen if I stopped pretending. If I asked the wrong question. If she confirmed what I already knew deep down, that someone else had her attention now. And maybe her heart. We were still sleeping in the same bed, but it felt like I was lying next to a stranger. She always faced the wall. Her side of the bed stayed cold, like she barely touched it. Sometimes I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and find her sitting on the couch, phone in hand, light from the screen glowing against her face. She'd say she couldn't sleep. I stopped asking why. I started noticing her language changing too. It was all, I now. I'm busy. I need time. I'll handle it. We used to say we a lot. We should try that new place. We haven't gone on a trip in ages. That stopped months ago. Our kitchen used to have little sticky notes on the fridge, grocery lists, reminders, sometimes just a love you scribbled with a smiley face. Now it was bare. She used to toss her bag on the couch when she got home. Now it went straight to the bedroom. Zipped up. Out of sight. Like it contained something sacred or incriminating. I once joked, too lightly, that she was starting to act like a secret agent. She didn't even smile. And still, I said nothing. I told myself maybe it was just stress. Work. Hormones. Maybe I was the one being weird. Overthinking. Looking for meaning where there was none. But every time I tried to believe that, some new fragment would fall into my hands. Like the dry cleaning receipt I found in the laundry basket. A red dress. Not hers. Not from any occasion I could recall. When I asked her about it, she paused just long enough to plant doubt, then said, "Oh, that's my coworker's. We switched bags at the gym. Nicole hasn't been to the gym in 2 months." I stayed quiet. Because if I opened my mouth, I knew the dam would break. And I wasn't sure I was ready for the flood. So I watched. And waited. And counted the little things. The absence of lipstick on her coffee cup. The way she no longer touched my arm when she passed me in the hallway. The fact that she no longer asked about my day, just gave a vague and looked at her phone. I'd become a background character in her life. A placeholder. The guy she lived with while her real life happened somewhere else, outside, with someone else. And I was scared to find out who. But I kept telling myself, not yet. Not until I was sure. Not until I had more than pieces. So I stayed. While she drifted. And I slowly unraveled in silence. It was a Thursday night. Late September. The air had that first bite of autumn in it, cool enough to pull on a jacket, quiet enough to hear your own thoughts if you weren't careful. Nicole told me she had a business event. Again. The third one in 2 weeks. This time, some kind of client appreciation mixer, she said, with vague mentions of industry people and catered wine. I didn't question it out loud, but my stomach turned when she said it. Not because of the event itself, but because of how easily the lie rolled off her tongue. No details, no specific location, no nervous laugh. Just smooth delivery, like reading lines from a script she knew too well. She wore the black dress. The one that made strangers turn their heads. I'd bought it for her birthday the year before, and she used to wear it for us. Now she wore it for business. She straightened her hair, sprayed perfume I didn't recognize, and didn't ask how she looked. I asked, "Will you be home late?" She barely looked up. "Depends." And that was it. Door closed. Heels on the porch. Engine purring to life. Gone. I stood there for a few minutes, staring at the space she'd just vacated, and something inside me snapped. Not in anger, but in clarity. I was done playing blind. I was done gaslighting myself. I opened my phone and scrolled through a contact I hadn't used in a while, Trevor. One of our mutual friends. Not super close, but close enough to know people. Industry people. Event people. I texted. "Hey man, random question. Nicole mentioned she's going to a mixer tonight for work. You know if there's anything like that happening?" His reply came faster than I expected. "Nope. Not that I've heard." "You mean the thing at Ridgeview?" My stomach twisted. Ridgeview. That was not what she told me. Not even close. "Yeah," I typed, "what's that?" He replied. "Private party. Not a work thing. Reed's throwing it. You know, Nicole's old project partner. Reed." That name felt like a punch. Tall. Loud laugh. Always hugged too long. He and Nicole worked together 2 years ago on a consulting gig. She used to mention him in passing, read this, read that, until one day she didn't mention him at all. I never thought much of it. He was one of those people who could charm a room in 5 seconds. I never liked the guy. But I trusted Nicole. Stupid. I grabbed my keys. I don't know what I planned to do. I wasn't thinking clearly. I just needed to see. I needed to know to finally stop wondering. It felt like my gut had been screaming at me for months and I'd been stuffing a pillow over its mouth. Ridgeview wasn't far. 20 minutes, maybe? A big house on a corner lot, long driveway lined with cars, patio lights glowing against the dark sky. Laughter spilled out from the backyard. Music, voices, clinking glasses. I didn't walk up right away. I parked 2 blocks away and sat in the car with the engine off, watching the porch. People came and went. I didn't recognize most of them. Then I saw her, Nicole, in the black dress, standing under string lights in the backyard, drink in hand, laughing. And next to her, way too close, was Reed. He wasn't just standing beside her. He had his hand on her waist. And she wasn't pulling away. I didn't feel rage. I didn't feel heartbreak. I felt still, cold, like the wind had moved through me and taken something vital with it. I got out of the car and walked, slowly, deliberately. I passed strangers, passed the porch, ignored the music. I walked straight into the backyard, the party noise dulling to a low hum as people noticed me. Heads turned. Conversations paused. Nicole didn't see me at first. Then she did. Her smile froze. Reed's arm was still around her. I stopped a few feet away. "Nicole?" I said, loud enough for everyone to hear, calm enough to be heard over the music. "You can choose right now. Leave with him or explain everything to me. One path is truth, the other performance. What do you choose?" It was like the entire backyard inhaled and forgot how to breathe. Nicole didn't say anything. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Her eyes flicked from me to Reed like she was trying to decide what story to tell. And to whom? That's when Reed spoke. He smirked, loud and casual, like he thought he was the hero of some sitcom. "She already chose me," he said, arms still around her, voice full of smugness. "You just didn't want to see it. Even on those nights when she came back from my place and lied to your face, you could have heard a pin drop. No music, no whispers, just the buzz of the patio lights and Nicole's silence. I didn't respond. I didn't punch him. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I just exhaled. Long, slow. Not from anger, from release. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and finally let it go." Nicole looked at me then, really looked, like she'd never expected me to show up, like she was suddenly face to face with the person she'd been erasing, bit by bit, day by day. I didn't give her the satisfaction of a goodbye. I turned and walked, past the stairs, past the house, into the dark street. I didn't drive home. I didn't want to. Instead, I got on the highway and headed out of the city, toward nowhere in particular. My only destination was distance. I ended up 2 hours away, at an old mountain motel we once stayed in years ago. She always said she loved the way the windows fogged up in the morning. I remembered that, pulling into the empty lot. But that place wasn't ours anymore. It was mine now, and that mattered. I checked in, dropped my keys on the desk, and lay back on the bed. No tears, no shaking, just a heavy silence pressing into my chest. And for the first time, I didn't feel scared of it. I wasn't begging for clarity. I wasn't replaying the scene in my head, because I'd seen everything I needed to see. There was no undoing that moment in the garden. No walking back what had been said. I wasn't the guy she cried for. I was the guy she lied to, and that made all the difference. I didn't turn on the lights when I got into the motel room. I didn't need to. I knew this place. Same creaky floors, same dusty beige curtains, same worn comforter with the floral pattern that always reminded me of bad wallpaper. Nicole and I had stayed here once, years ago, after missing our turn on a road trip. We called it a happy accident then. Ordered pizza, played cards on the floor, talked until 3 in the morning about where we'd be in 10 years. I guess this was the answer. I dropped onto the bed without taking off my shoes and just stared up at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift as cars passed by on the highway. Everything felt still. No buzzing phone. No explanations pending. No screaming in my head about what I should have done differently. Just silence. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel the urge to fill it. Not with questions. Not with reasons. Not with her. I don't know how long I lay there before I moved. Maybe an hour. Maybe more. The motel room had this old standing lamp with a cracked shade. When I turned it on, the light was warm, almost soft, like it didn't know what had happened earlier that night. I sat at the tiny table by the window and pulled out my phone. A single message blinked on the lock screen. "Nicole, Mark. Please call me." That was it. No apology. No context. Just a plea. I locked the phone and set it face down. Outside, it had started to rain. Light at first, then a steadier, rhythmic sound against the roof. I listened to it, let it wash over me. Let it remind me of all the nights I stayed up waiting for Nicole to come home, pretending not to be worried, not to be wondering. I used to cling to every little thing she gave me. A text, a smile, a warm hand on my back. Yeah? Now I saw them for what they really were, temporary, empty gestures keeping me on the hook while her heart was already elsewhere. She had left the marriage a long time ago. She just forgot to tell me. And I fooled that I was kept trying to hold her place at the table. I thought about the last time she laughed with me, really laughed, not that polite, forced kind she gave to strangers and people she didn't want to disappoint. It had been months. Maybe longer. We used to make dumb faces across the table. Raced to finish crosswords together. She once made me pancakes shaped like dinosaurs just because I said I missed my childhood. That woman was gone. And I didn't lose her all at once. I lost her slowly in the way she stopped saying my name with warmth. In the way she started choosing solitude over us. In the way she let Reed put his hand on her waist like it belonged there. I stayed in that motel for 3 days. Didn't tell anyone where I was. Didn't answer calls. Didn't look at social media. I let the silence stretch, and for the first time, it didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like clarity. I took walks in the morning, breathed the pine-scented air, drank terrible coffee from the vending machine in the lobby. I watched old reruns on the fuzzy TV and didn't care that the volume didn't work right. I wasn't running from what happened anymore. I was sitting in it, letting it sink in, letting it reshape me. There's something about being completely alone in a place that used to hold a memory, that used to mean something to two people, that forces you to figure out who you are without the other half of the story. I used to think I was just a husband. Nicole's husband. That was my role, my identity. Provider. Listener. Forgiver. But now? Now I didn't know exactly who I was, but I knew who I wasn't anymore. I wasn't the man who let someone else rewrite his value. I wasn't the guy begging for crumbs from a person already full on someone else's attention. On the third night, I sat outside the motel under a dim porch light, just listening to the crickets and the occasional hum of tires on wet pavement. I had my jacket zipped up, hood pulled over my head. And I smiled. Not because I was happy. Not even close. But because I wasn't afraid anymore. I'd spent months feeling like I was walking on a tightrope, trying to keep a balance in a relationship that no longer existed. Now I had fallen. And the ground, as it turned out, wasn't as far as I thought. I didn't go back to Nicole right away. I didn't tell her I was coming. I didn't even know what I'd say when I walked back through the door of our house. But I knew this. I wasn't going to walk in as the same man who left. I wasn't coming back to ask her to explain herself. I wasn't coming back for apologies. I was coming back to reclaim what little was still mine, and to let go of what no longer was. When I finally returned home, it was late afternoon. The sky was that grayish gold you only get in early October, soft light bleeding through clouds like the sun was just as tired as I was. I pulled into the driveway slower than usual. The leaves had started to fall. One of Nicole's sandals lay tipped over near the porch like she'd left in a hurry or came back distracted and didn't bother fixing it. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine. I stood at the front door for a full minute before going in. My keys felt heavier than I remembered. When I stepped inside, I was greeted by stillness. Not quiet stillness. You'd be surprised how different those two things feel when you've spent weeks listening for lies between footsteps. The air was clean. Too clean. The living room had been tidied. Her blanket folded over the couch. No mug on the table. No scent of her usual lavender candle. Then I saw it. On the kitchen table. A single note. Folded once. No envelope. No salutation. It read, "I need space. Don't make this harder. No love, Nicole." No apology. No signature. Just that. Cold. Mechanical. Almost cowardly. It made something inside me go very, very still. Not out of shock. Not even pain. I think I'd already burned through most of those emotions at the motel. I didn't shout. Didn't crumple the note or slam the table like they do in movies. I just picked it up. Read it again. Nodded. And then I left it exactly where I found it. Nicole had left. Not in the dramatic, bags packed, door slammed kind of way. She had slipped out the side door of our life. Quietly. Cleanly. Without confrontation. That was the moment I knew I was truly alone in this house. And instead of panicking, I started to move. First, I went to the hallway closet. Grabbed a suitcase. Packed my clothes without second-guessing what I might need. I didn't pack everything. Just enough. It wasn't about running. It was about cutting the rope that kept me tethered to a lie. Then, from the back of the guest room drawer, I found something I hadn't touched in years, an old shoebox. Inside were the letters she'd written me when we first started dating. This was back before texting had taken over everything. She used to write notes on napkins, notebook paper, even receipts. I unfolded one dated July 2011. We had just moved in together. She wrote, "You make the world feel less sharp. With you, I'm not afraid to be soft." I remember we read that one out loud to each other while making grilled cheese. That memory didn't make me cry. It just made me realize how long it had been since she'd said anything like that. Since I'd seen that version of her, the one who smiled at grocery stores and danced in the kitchen. I set the letters back in the box. I didn't throw them away. I just didn't need to read them anymore. I didn't know exactly where I was headed, but I knew I couldn't stay in that house another night. So I left. I drove past the city limits, past the familiar exits, into nowhere. I didn't use GPS. No playlists. No calls. Just the hum of the engine and the silence I was no longer afraid of. I stopped for gas in a small town off the highway. Bought a cheap notebook and a pen from a gas station. The cashier looked at me like I was coming from a funeral. Maybe I was. I didn't buy the notebook to write about Nicole. I bought it to write about the sky, and the sound of gravel under my boots, and the names of towns I might never visit again. It was the first thing I'd bought for myself in a long time that didn't come with guilt attached. That night, I stayed in a roadside inn. Not much bigger than the motel, but cleaner. Simpler. The woman at the front desk called me Han and told me to take any room I wanted on the left wing. It had better windows, she said. I thanked her. That mattered to me. The thank you. In the room, I sat at the desk and wrote a single line in my notebook. I am allowed to move forward without permission. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't profound. But it was mine. And when I read it back, I felt something inside me shift. Nicole had always been the one who moved. Changed cities. Changed jobs. Changed clothes 3 times before a dinner date. And I had always been the one who stayed. Waited. Adjusted. Compromised. But this was my turn. I wasn't rebuilding. Not yet. I was rediscovering. The next morning, I took a long walk down a gravel path behind the inn. It led to a pond half covered in lily pads. The air smelled like pine and smoke. Somewhere in the distance, a radio was playing classic rock through a static crackled speaker. I didn't check my phone. Didn't care if she texted again. I didn't need her closure anymore. Her absence was answer enough. And in that moment, watching the water ripple in silence, I understood something I hadn't let myself believe until then. I wasn't broken. I was free. We need to talk. Just those 4 words. No punctuation, no emoji, nothing to soften it. I stared at the screen for a few minutes, then typed back. Where? We met at a little cafe on the east side of town, somewhere we'd never been together. That felt deliberate, like she didn't want ghosts of our past watching us from the walls. She was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window, hands around a cup she hadn't touched. When she saw me, she stood too quickly, like her body didn't know how to behave around mine anymore. Hey, she said quietly. Nicole. We sat down. I didn't offer a hug. She didn't ask. She looked different. Not glamorous. Not broken. Just smaller somehow. Like someone who'd finally started telling the truth to herself and didn't like what she heard. She talked first. About space. About mistakes. About being overwhelmed and confused. She said she never meant to hurt me, but she knew that meant little now. She talked for a long time, like she'd rehearsed it, but her voice cracked near the end. That was the only moment that felt real. Then she asked the question I knew would come. What if I understood everything too late? I looked at her for a long time. Not to punish. Just to remember. This woman sitting across from me wasn't my wife anymore. And maybe she hadn't been for a while. I'm not your enemy, I said. But I won't go back to where I haven't existed for a long time. Then I took off my ring and placed it on the table between us. Her lips trembled. She turned her face to the window and wiped her eyes with the sleeve of her coat. We didn't fight. We didn't beg. We didn't say goodbye. We just stopped pretending. I drove north. No destination. Just movement. Just forward. I stopped in a small town with a main street made of brick and a coffee shop that played nothing but jazz. I rented a room above a bookstore, the kind that smells like paper and rain. I wrote in that notebook every morning. Nothing poetic, just fragments. Things I saw, things I heard, quotes from strangers. I didn't write about Nicole. Not anymore. A few days in, I walked into a small clothing store because the flannel in the window reminded me of something I'd worn in college. As I stood by the register, the woman behind the counter smiled and said, "Cool shirt. Simple but stylish." That was it. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't performing. She was just present. And in that 1 second, something clicked inside me. I didn't need to be chosen anymore. I didn't need to prove my worth. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in what felt like years, that was enough.